Hello, this is Richard Corbett from Emerge by Design, and welcome to this week's weekly astrological and human design transit report. Now, we are looking at both the body graph and the astrological wheel starting today, Monday, October 14th. But what I want to remind us is that we started this lunar cycle back on October 2nd in the sign of Libra. We had a new moon partial solar eclipse on October 2nd. And so, having a new moon in Libra, we know that the themes of this lunar cycle for this month are going to be very associated with our relationships, whether they be romantic, work, neighbor, you name it. All relationships are part of the lunar theme this month. And then we had our first quarter moon on October 10th. And at that time, the moon was moving through the sign of Capricorn, and she was indicating that there was work to be done. And this brings us to today, Monday, October 14th. And we have a lot of dynamic energies going on in the chart. And we will have a full moon in Aries coming up this Thursday. So we'll be getting to that in a few minutes. But what I want to do first is ground us in the chart and line out where the major aspects and themes are as of today. And the ones I'll be talking about, they're not just one day today, they're part of the whole thematic of this week. So we'll start with the sun in Libra still and see this. The sun is in gate 32, called the gate of continuity. It is located in our splenic awareness center, and it's the ancient instinctual awareness to know what has value that can transform our family, our tribe, and our community. It has the awareness to know what is no longer serving us and maybe need to let that go, and what is serving us in efforts to transform, up level, upgrade our tribe. And there'll be some further correlations to that gate 32 as we move through this week. And that puts the Earth in its opposition to gate 32 in gate 42, found in the sacral center. It's part of the channel of maturation, a design of balanced development, and specifically the Earth is in gate 42, called the gate of growth. Now, that's important because Chiron, who does not get an activation in the body graph, but we can see in the astrological wheel, is in Aries at 21 degrees and 12 minutes, moving retrograde. And that happens to be in gate 42, line 1. That's extra significant this week because when we get to our full moon on Thursday, the full moon itself will be very close to that Chiron at 21 degrees. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Um, but as we're looking at the sun, boy, there's some very dynamic things going on all at once, and I'm going to break these down one by one to give us a sensation of what's going on in the astrological transit this week, and how does that help us? Where may we look to for support from the planetary frequencies, and where may we have more awareness about where some of the friction points or inflection points of where our lives may be impacted as we move through this lunar cycle, so closely associated with relationships in our life? Well, the first thing I want to look at is that when we think about the sun in Libra, the planet that rules the sign of Libra is Venus. And Venus happens to be in the next sign in Scorpio at 26 degrees. In the body graph, Venus is in gate 14, line 2. It's called the gate of power skills, and it's part of our individual circuitry, very closely associated with personal creativity, personal truth. Whenever we say individual circuitry, we are talking about the deeper, most inner core of who we are and what our path to personal fulfillment and creativity is. So this is where Venus is coming out of the sacral center in gate 14, called power skills. And Venus, as of today, is going to be exactly opposite Uranus. All of my charts are for noon Mountain Time. The only day that is not at noon will be the Aries full moon on Thursday, and I'll mention that again. But all of the other charts are run for noontime, and right at this noontime chart, Venus is almost to her exact perfection of opposition with the planet Uranus. Now, Venus in Scorpio is very passionate. Venus rules Libra. So we're thinking about harmony, tranquility, integrating with the other. And Uranus is the planet of shock, revolution, disruption, radical change, innovation, technology. It's the real wild card planet. It can bring unusual things whenever it's in aspect in a transit. And Uranus is still in Taurus, moving retrograde, and it's currently still in gate 8, line 3. Gate 8 is called the line of contribution. It's also an individual circuitry coming, it's part of the throat center, part of our individual contribution of inspiration. So, with this particular aspect I'm starting with, Venus, the ruler of this lunar cycle, is in a dynamic opposition or tension with Uranus. Now, this may indicate that there's possibilities for abrupt change. Or maybe new interests, right? When we're thinking about all of our relationships, we know that they go through seasons and cycles, just a natural pattern of growth and development. Um, and so, with this Venus Uranus opposition, we may be sensing that something needs to give, something needs to change, or maybe create some more space for some creativity or some new development to emerge. But we're definitely getting a sense that there's something in the backdrop here, that there's a yearning, a desire, something's being brought through this opposition, possible change with what we consider to be the harmony of our relationship and where growth and development may be needed. Now, Venus has several interesting other things that are happening this week. One is that you can also see at 26 degrees of Scorpio, she is forming a trine with Neptune, the ruler, and in its home sign of Pisces. Currently in the body graph, Neptune is in gate 36, line 6, traveling backwards. Now, Venus trining Neptune, we have two water signs here, Scorpio being fixed water, Pisces being mutable water, Neptune in her home sign, Venus, the ruler of the lunar cycle that we're in. This is a very important trine. Whenever we think trine, we're thinking support, cooperation, resolution, dissolution, evolution. There's something very supportive going on with this trine right here, but it's coming from Pisces, and so it might be really murky and watery, difficult to really maybe catch the support that may be there. This Neptune trine Venus it's giving it that watery, supportive, yet making things maybe a little bit confusing. Whenever Neptune and Pisces is involved here, we know that we're dealing with the liminal world, that it's not concrete. It may not feel 3D, but there's an important message being delivered here, and that trine will continue to grow over the next couple days in terms of its intensity. And while that's happening, and Venus continues moving through Scorpio, she will be forming a sextile with Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto is moving direct now and is about to leave the sign of Capricorn on November 20th. So we're just over a month away. Pluto will be leaving the sign of Capricorn. It won't be back again for almost 250 years. So Pluto is in a very critical stage in its movement. Pluto's already dipped its toes into Aquarius a couple times and come retrograde back into Capricorn. But we are in the final days of Pluto in this sign, ruled by Saturn, the sign of structure, discipline, strategic action. And so he's been there since 2008. And we have certainly seen him doing his underworld work, bringing things that were hidden out into the open concerning things relating to our governments, our institutions, and how they may not be serving their people so well anymore. And so we're going to keep a close eye on this what happens over this next month here as Pluto's about to leave Capricorn. And so I find that all of the aspects to Pluto are very important right now. He is at the anaretic degree. It's Pluto's last chance to show us the hidden things that need to be seen concerning our larger organizational structures, and not just larger, but also internally, how we've structured our life, patterns that we've had that we were taught or maybe conditioned to be in, and how they may no longer be serving us, and how it's time to move past that now. So Venus playing a very interesting role because of the opposition to Uranus, the trine to Neptune, and beginning to form a sextile to that Pluto, bringing the hidden truth into light. And you can think of this again in terms of our relationships. What are we learning about? The new moon in Libra was conjunct the south node. And so there's been this portal since then where there may be access or information to our past relationships all the way back that have the portal potential to come through into the present time. What we've learned or gained or gone through in the past is very possible right now to mutate that. Pluto is in gate 60, part of the channel of mutation, in specifically the gate of limitation. And so there can be tremendous breakthroughs this week. That's one thing I want to share. I'm going to talk about a couple of the other aspects to get the week started here. There's definitely some challenging aspects, but wow, there is tremendous opportunity in that gate 42. Growth, development, and the evolution, both of our own inner authenticity and how that can support the structures and communities that we live in as well. Now, some of the other aspects we want to bring in is that as of today, that sun in gate 32 being opposed to Chiron, as I mentioned, in gate 42. The sun opposed Chiron. This is another opposition where there's tension. We have a tendency in oppositions to look at one side and lose the other, or possibly to project onto the other. But part of the underlying current of this aspect is that the wounded healer, Chiron, is in the offering. How we can heal from our past or forgive others in our past. There's real opportunity for growth and development concerning the healing process, wherever area of life that we may relate to that in this recording, or also in your chart, wherever the sign of Aries is, whatever house that is in, we can sense a real opportunity for growth and development. And part of the entire lunar cycle with the new moon in Libra concerning relationships and the full moon, which will be happening on Thursday in Aries, is that part of the storyline is how am I finding my own Aryan truth and energy to stand up with confidence in the world. Aries is the sign of how we move our personal boundaries, push them out into the world. And so this balance between who am I against who am I within the relationship. And that's very much part of the theme of this lunar cycle and being brought to the forefront today with the sun exactly opposite that Chiron. And in addition to the sun opposite Chiron, both the sun and Chiron are squaring Mars in Cancer. This is what we call a T-square. T-squares are very dynamic energy. They indicate friction. They can show up as a challenge or a limitation or possibly even an altercation, but the offering is that there's potential energy for growth. Squares and oppositions offer growth and development, and a T-square is that times 2 or 3, if you will. And so Mars in Cancer, Mars is in its fall in Cancer. This is not Mars' favorite sign. He is the god of war, and here he is swimming in the ocean of the watery cardinal sign of Cancer, ruled by the moon. But when we think about Mars in Cancer, we can think that he is giving tremendous strength and defending the security, the inner emotional security that we seek to find in the sign of Cancer. So Mars, in that sense, is rather sensitive. And having him square the sun and the life force energy of gate 32 and squaring Chiron in that gate 42, we're getting a story here that feels very much like deep internal emotional challenges and friction that if we can follow our authority to draw on modalities that will support us in our own sense of personal healing and forgiveness, this T-square is the opportunity. It is the invitation. Now, supporting that energy is that Jupiter in Gemini, also in gate 45, And Jupiter has stopped and turned retrograde now. So he's very, very, very slowly moving backwards, or apparent backwards, in gate 45, line 5. In fact, he'll be in that line this entire week, so he's not moving very fastly. But Jupiter is forming a sextile with Chiron. And so when we look at this dynamic T-square between Mars, Sun, Chiron, in support of that dynamic energy, we have Jupiter in its expansive, benevolent, wanting to grow and expand that healing process of Chiron in gate 42. This aspect has been in effect all last week and certainly all of this coming week. And I think that's really one of the supportive bedrocks to the current week that we're talking about. That Jupiter in this gate 45, right? This is a tribal gate in tribal circuitry. It's called gathering together. And I think in this sense, what I'm getting from this Jupiter is that there's great opportunity for support in this healing process. Or maybe you're being invited to support someone else who needs your help going through a deeply triggering and cathartic personal process that has to do with healing and quite possibly has to do with the particular relationship that we may be thinking about. But I think that Jupiter sextile Chiron is very supportive to this healing process. And also that Jupiter is trining the sun, which I mentioned, the sun is opposite Chiron. So what it's really doing is it's bringing in this Jupiter and Mars to this entire life force chironic story that we're dealing with this week. And we may see that in conversations in any of our relationship where we're, in a sense, triggered or offended or hurt in some way. And I would encourage us all to use those as signals. Right? If we notice ourselves being somewhat dysregulated, the natural tendency is to defend ourselves or to project the problem onto the other or lash out to the other. But really, I think the message of the transits this week is that anything that is dysregulating us in that sense is an opportunity to go inward, to check in with our own sense of our hero's journey. Where have I been wronged or hurt in the past? And what's happening now that I can reframe that story? I can heal from that story and actually use my own chironic gift to alchemize that experience so that it can become one of my greatest strengths and gifts that I can share with others. So tremendous opportunity available, but it is very tricky. We've got the watery Neptune there aspecting the Venus. And of course, Venus can be very passionate in Scorpio. Venus in Scorpio, it knows the dirt, right? It knows the hidden things. It knows what's been swept under the carpet, and she's willing to bring it out and use it part of her story. So I think that any particular type of altercation or argument within our relationship this week could be very destructive. I mean, they seem to me to have a frequency here where they could turn in a bad direction very quickly. Yet, if we can use the symbol and the sign of what's happening to go, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I'm having an opportunity here. I'm being somewhat triggered and dysregulated. Let me be curious about that. Why am I feeling that way? Where does that come from? And so here's the opportunity to trace those roots of fear, doubt, and insecurity back to where they began. And maybe we can finally do our last healing process on that. I really love this Chiron in 42. He's retrograde right now, so we're going to get a lot more of Chiron in gate 42. But really, this is the gate of growth. This is the gate of evolution. And so it's a collective gate. And so in that sense, I really think it speaks to the idea that through our own personal journey of self-healing, we are healing the generations of pain and suffering. We are adding to the new collective story of what healing and authenticity means to our offspring and our future. And so we stand at a very pivotal moment right now where we can change the story. We can change our story. If we have felt the victim and we are blaming others for the past hurts that we've had, this is the opportunity to change that story, to recognize that everything happened the way it did to accept that. That's a big gate 60 message, right? It's called the gate of acceptance. And the tagline of gate 60 is the first step in transcendence. It is acceptance. And so while what may be happening in the outside world right now that's coming from the transits and stimulating this inside of us and triggering this inside of us, to recognize that now is the opportunity for deep personal growth as well as collective growth as we learn to enhance and improve our relationships. Nine-centered relating, where I have my personal truth and you have yours, and we respect each other in that process to follow our own authentic energy. So, dynamic energy definitely can be tricky to navigate, but boy, there is a lot of positive potential that we may see come out to see when we see what comes from this week itself. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and we'll move to Tuesday. And on Tuesday, we can see that Venus trine Neptune is in the same exact degree at 27 degrees, so it's very strong. And we also have the moon conjunct Neptune. Now, I didn't mention the moon on yesterday's chart, but the moon was conjunct Saturn in gate 63, and now the moon is conjunct Neptune. Well, Neptune's at 36 line 6. At the noontime chart, the moon just moved out of gate 36 and is currently at the noontime chart, gate 25, line 1, the gate of innocence, the gate of spirit of the self. And so with this moon conjunct Neptune, while all this other dynamic energy I've already described is still going on, we're getting this emotional support in the sign of Pisces. Right? Pisces is not the end of the zodiac or the beginning. It's everything. It's the involution, dissolution, evolution, death, rebirth, creation, imagination, spirituality. And we may need to draw on all of these areas of our life to support us as we go through this deep chironic journey. But the moon herself is giving us this emotional connection to the watery world of Pisces, and specifically Neptune, and the moon itself as she travels through gate 25, and we can experience this newfound innocence. That gate 25 speaks very much to the healing process, right? It's the finding innocence in life without precondition, without having to control, just that idea again of accepting things are what they are, and what can I do about it now in order to find my own spirit of my higher self. All of those other aspects I described are still in effect on Tuesday. The Venus opposite Uranus, the Mars T-square Sun Chiron. Again, this is a multi-day frequency that we've been talking about. And so we're just going to be following our authority day to day, moment to moment, and remembering that any stimulating, over triggering, dysregulating energy is just to remind ourselves to take some deep breaths, connect with our body, ground ourselves in Mother Earth, and the Earth itself is in gate 42, and ask ourselves, how can we grow right now? What is the next step in my chironic journey this week? All right, we'll go ahead and go to Wednesday. And on Wednesday, the moon has moved into Aries. And so we're one less at this noontime chart on Wednesday, we're less than a day. The new moon is, I'm sorry, the full moon in Aries will be on Thursday morning. So we're less than 24 hours away when we look at this chart. And we can see that that moon is approaching Chiron. We can also see in the body graph, now we had the channel of acceptance since Monday, a design of an organizational being. And that was because that Mars in Cancer was in gate 62, and we have the North Node in gate 17. Now, what that channel there all week long is offering this frequency where there's a lot of logical opinions floating around, right? A lot of people may have what they think about what's going on and what should go on next. But I think, again, the symbolism I'm getting from the charts this week is that this is a very internal process. And again, that Cancer in gate 62, that is a collective gate. But I think of it with Mars and Cancer here, it's really about, where is my emotional security? And why and when do I feel the need to protect myself in that way? And I think Mars is operating an opportunity to bring these things to light. Certain experiences may happen this week that do that to us. And now we have the opportunity to be curious about that. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I dysregulated? What do I have to fear? And I think just those contemplations and asking these questions of ourselves can lead to tremendous health and growth and development. And we still have, of course, that Jupiter sextiling Chiron. In fact, it's getting close to its perfection, and it's only about 7 minutes of a degree away from that. And Jupiter will continue moving retrograde until that perfection. And we also can see in the body graph at the noontime chart on Wednesday, the moon in Aries has moved into gate 21. It's at line 5 at the noon chart. And so for a greater part of the day, we're also getting the channel of the money line, a design of a materialist, because as I mentioned, Jupiter is in that gate 45. So what I'm really sensing from this channel is that when we think about everything I've been talking about in terms of relationships and healing and so forth, there's this strong element of support. Whether we need support or whether we have the opportunity or invitation to offer support, but these are such challenging cycles of growth and development, it is important that we support each other. And I would encourage all of us to ask for help if we need it, right? There's such an opportunity here. We don't want to miss it, particularly with Pluto in gate 60 and about to leave the sign of Capricorn. It is not going to be healthy or supportive to sweep anything under the rug right now. Let's get it out. Let's use that Venus in Scorpio to talk about it. Know how, even though it may be difficult, it may be something we have been putting off. Venus at 28 degrees Scorpio is saying, let's get it out into the open. That sign of Scorpio is the modern day ruler is Pluto. And that's why, and you can see in the wheel that sextile forming Venus at 28 degrees of Scorpio, Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn. We'll see that aspect here on Wednesday, and we'll see it again for the Aries full moon chart. But there's some sort of reconciliation that may be possible between this Venus Pluto. Pluto rules a sign of Scorpio. Venus ruled the lunar cycle we're in. I mean, these are priority type conversations. And there seems to be something Pluto wants to get done before it leaves the sign of Capricorn, and it's having its last sextile to Venus for the next 250 years. And so the things of Venus related to Libra and harmony, inner tranquility, and love and beauty, there's something to learn right here, something that can be drug up from the underworld that needs to be seen, that we can recognize it, accept it, name it for what it is, and find a way to heal from it and incorporate us, kind of like emotional scars that we wear and that we've been there. We've had the experience, we've lived through it, we've alchemized our chironic journey for our self-healing, but also becoming a gift that we can offer for others on their own journey as well. All right, let's go ahead and move to the Aries full moon. Now, this is taking place this Thursday at 5:26 a.m. Mountain Time. And we can see from the body graph that the only channel we have defined is still that channel of acceptance, a design of an organizational being. And again, it was because Mars in gate 62 and the North Node in gate 17. And we still have these aspects I started with on Monday. We've got the moon is still in a T square to the sun Chiron. We have the Jupiter is still sextile the Chiron. We have the full moon itself conjunct the Chiron. It's about 2.5 degrees away, so that's a pretty tight orb. So certainly Chiron, from all of these aspects, really being brought to the forefront of this full moon in Aries. And when we think about the full moon in Aries, again, we're talking about Aries. This is the individual sign of confidence and courage and pushing ourselves out into the world. What do we want? What do we want to go get? This is what Aries often indicates, and Mars itself. Like, how do we stand up and push ourselves out into the world? but it's very connected to the new moon 2 weeks prior in Libra. How does that work within a relationship? How do I find my sense of truth and integrity and authenticity within the relationships that I currently have? All of them. Again, doesn't have to be romantic. We're talking about all of our interpersonal relationships. And how am I standing up with my authenticity? Or how am I not doing that? And if I'm not doing that, what's going on? Am I trying to people please? Or am I trying to fit in? And these are normal things that we all go through and part of our immediate family and community. But these, if we're doing things that are out of alignment, I feel like we're going to see it happen this week. We're going to be tapped on the shoulder by these aspects saying, that wasn't true. That's not really what you feel about yourself. And we need to re examine our communication. We really, this is an excellent week to be working on communication with all of our relationships. Often, maybe saying something and then asking the other, what did you hear me say? Did I really get through? Because I really want to be clear and I want to speak my highest frequency of my authentic truth within this relationship. And if we're not doing that, I think there's some symbols here that are indicating we're going to be, it's going to let us know, right? We're going to have the opportunity to take a second look at this and to see if there's something that we're holding back, some pain from the past that is preventing us from speaking comfortably, authentically, in a regulated way. What is my truth I want to share out into the world, particularly with this Aries full moon? And how has my chironic journey, my personal chironic journey, how has my growth and development through overcoming and living through cathartic healing processes, how is that supporting me in my Aryan journey? And I think that's definitely part of the full moon. Again, it's got the support of Jupiter in the gate 45. And that Chiron in gate 42. And here we can see that the moon at the full moon will be in gate 42, line 5. As I mentioned, Chiron at this full moon will be gate 42, line 1. But having the moon so closely conjunct Chiron in that gate 42, whether or not we have that defined in our own chart, it's speaking to the fact that we all have the opportunity to grow, to move through and complete possibly a new cycle of maturation associated with our own personal healing process. So, again, fantastic energy if we're willing to be aware, to follow our authority, to accept what is, to let go of things from the past that are no longer serving us, to forgive the people involved once and for all, to truly forgive them, to recognize that everybody is doing the best that they can right now. And I can support not only myself, but others in their own process along the way. Additionally, at the full moon, I've been talking about the Venus sextile Pluto, and you can see that they are exactly sextile. Venus at 29 degrees 35 minutes of Scorpio, Pluto at 29 degrees 38 minutes of Capricorn. That Venus is in gate 14, line 6. So it's still in the gate of power skills where she started out the week. And so we have gate 14 coming from individual circuitry, Pluto in gate 60, individual circuitry. Okay. And so we're recognizing that the aspects are pointing us inward, pointing to into our own deep inner core of our maturation, our growth, the development of our truth through cathartic healing processes. It's really, again, it's fantastic opportunities should you see this in your life. If the things I'm describing resonate, if you can correlate it to a particular relationship you're having, I offer the encouragement and the invitation that this is the time to seize the opportunity. Following authority, obviously, at all times, but wow, this particular pattern that we're in could be deeply transformative, transmutative at a deep inner individual core level on how we show up in our relationships. And let's go ahead and we'll move to Friday, October 18th. The sun is in its final line 6 of that gate 32, and the earth still in gate 42. And Venus herself has just moved into Sagittarius. Now, when Venus moves into Sagittarius, that's a very different frequency here. Venus can feel, if there's been some sort of movement in that storyline I was talking about, Venus may be feeling very optimistic right now. Sagittarius is the sign of Jupiter. And so there may be a collective sigh of relief or tears or some sort of optimism that we have gone through this Aries full moon ring of fire. And now we can see where this new part of our story develops. How are we telling those stories now? Um, this is part of Sagittarius here. How are we sharing with the world these visions and ideals and dreams that we have may have been greatly enhanced and altered and transmutated as a result of this chironic healing opportunity during this lunar cycle. The moon is also moved into Taurus by Friday. And so she's bringing this emotional grounding. And we can think of putting our roots into to new soil in that sense, and how we're self-nourishing ourselves. I think that's another important aspect of Mars in Cancer, asking us, how am I using my energy to self-nourish and take care of myself? And that's going to be very important as we move through these tricky aspects there during this current week. And not only is the moon in Taurus, but she's sextile Saturn in gate 63 on Friday. And that Saturn still moving retrograde in Pisces in gate 63. It's part of the channel of logic. Specifically, it's called the gate of doubt. And I think what Saturn is offering here is a restructuring of our past doubts of what is possible. And I think this really relates to the idea of how is our story changing? You know, as we listen to ourselves talk this week, how are we describing past events? We may have a doubting structure that has come from a maladaptive experience. And now is this opportunity to restructure what we consider to be logical. There's new possibilities now, having been through this particular pattern that we're in. And I think the moon is really touching on that while she's in Taurus, offering this grounding sense of stability and supporting and sextiling the restructuring that Saturn is doing in gate 63. As we move into Saturday, the sun has left gate 32 and moved into gate 50, putting the earth in its opposition in gate 3 in Aries. Now, gate 3 is part of the channel of mutation. And as I mentioned earlier, Pluto is still in gate 60. And so for the coming week, starting on Saturday, we are going to have the channel of mutation, a design that initiates and fluctuated, activated for the whole week by Pluto and the Earth. Now, this is such an interesting channel to follow on the heels of everything else I've talked about this week. There really is an opportunity for this individual mutation, something that can be totally different, right? The way things have been in the past, this week has the opportunity to alter them forever. There's sort of a before and an after. And I think not only the new moon in Leo that we were talking about, the full moon in Aries, and all of the aspects that fed in to Chiron and Jupiter and Mars and Pluto. We've been talking about all of them. They've all been part of this storyline of potential in a healing process, and having this channel of mutation come into play with Pluto uh, is quite significant. And so I think it simply speaks again to the magnitude of the opportunity. If we can follow our authority, use the support from others and the modalities that we're comfortable with, we have a chance to transform ourselves at a very core level. And I think that's going to be something interesting to watch for the coming week from Saturday through till the next weekend. Additionally, on Saturday, the moon is still in Taurus at the very end of Taurus at noon, but having just made a conjunction with that Uranus in gate 8. Now, this is significant, I think, because we had Venus opposite Uranus on Monday. Now we have the moon joining in a conjunction with Uranus in that gate 8. So it's coming back to we're getting so much individual channel and gates stimulated currently in this pattern. And with the moon moving through here now, I think it brings her ability to soothe and nurture and emotionally connect us with our ultimate sense of what the archetype of gate 8. What is our inspiration? What is my contribution to the world right now? I mean, this is really important work. Finding this sense of authenticity. To me, it actually represents the currency of the future. Our authenticity is what matters. It's what makes us real. It's what changes our frequency and those around us. So, important work Uranus is doing in this gate 8. And I think here on Saturday, with the moon passing by Uranus, it's extra stimulating that sense of what is my voice right now? What is part of my incarnation path this go around? And what is the contribution that I would like to make to the world? Still have that Jupiter sextile Chiron. As I said, that is very strong all week. It's a still very tight orb, that sextile. So Jupiter continuing to bring its benevolence and its good fortune to this cathartic healing process. Let's go ahead and move to Sunday. And when we get to Sunday, we can see that the moon has moved into the sign of Gemini and is currently at the noontime chart in gate 35. So the moon will be activating gate 35 for the majority of the daylight hours here in the northern hemisphere. We still have Neptune in that gate 36. Now, this is activating the channel of transitoriness, a design of a jack of all trades, but it's very associated with emotional maturity and experience. And my goodness, I really think, again, what an interesting aspect to have on Sunday after what we've gone through so far this lunar cycle, that there is a new found emotional, experiential wisdom in the offering. Moon in gate 35, that's called the gate of progress. And as we're in the waning phase now, right? We've now passed the full moon on Thursday, and so we're heading back to the next new moon. So the waning phase is a wonderful time to reflect, right? To think about what we've gone through, what stimulated us, how did we handle that, how do we ground ourselves, how do we heal ourselves? And so there's really emotional progress possible right here. Again, these have been tricky patterns, but if we're navigating them well with our personal authority, we are going to come out a more self-actualized, healed, and authentic voice at the end of it. Also, the moon at the noontime chart here on Sunday is squaring that Saturn, right? Squaring Saturn in gate 63. And I think what the message there is, through this possible newfound emotional progress or experiential wisdom, it's in a square to gate 63, and there's that possible restructuring. So Saturn getting triggered by the moon yet again here to check in with the emotional connection to our doubts, to what we considered logic previously. What does it look like now? The possibilities have changed. We are moving through time into the future. And with all of the dynamics of these frequencies here, Saturn is doing that work. And I think on Sunday, there's that emotional connection from the moon asking our own gate 33 here. What have we learned from this emotional experience and wisdom? And how has our logic reframed? How what we doubted was possible may be possible now. Additionally, the final aspect I'll mention on Sunday is that the sun is forming a quincunx with Neptune. So that sun in gate 50 line 2 is forming a partile quincunx, sorry, with Neptune in gate 36. Now, this is what, again, a quincunx is sort of it's staticky. It's not clear. And not only is Neptune in Pisces watery and unclear, but here we have a quincunx with the life force energy. And so I think on the particular day on Sunday can be a little hard possibly to get the message clear. I think the message has been very clear, what's been happening this week. But if we feel a little disillusioned on Sunday, We've got these powerful channels of mutation and of transitoriness affecting us. What I see here is to remind ourselves that we need to self-nourish. We need to ground ourselves in Mother Earth, connect with nature, sit in the grass, hug a tree, sit by a river or a lake. Anything we can do during these very stimulating times to connect with nature can really be part of that self-nourishing, getting good sleep, eating well, really taking care of ourselves. This is as I've mentioned a number of times, a very cathartic process we're in the midst of here. And what I sense here is it's really important to connect with ourselves and ground ourselves. And I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you for watching, and I wish you a great week. Bye for now.